Ended up in Fort Eustis, Virginia, which is on Chesapeake Bay, if I'm not mistaken. And
well, everything in Virginia is off Chesapeake Bay.
so anyway, we were in these bunks. Well, they were regular army barracks, wood. And I think the one we had was 2 stories. And we had a first sergeant, staff sergeant, and he was with a group of enlisted reserves from Asheville, North Carolina, with a bunch of his guys, and there was 7 Yankees mixed in.
With all these Southerners?
Yeah, yeah. And of course, some of these guys, they got on the subject of the Civil War and all that. One guy got on my case, and I told him right out, I said, listen, I wasn't in it, I didn't fight it, I didn't kill anybody, and
your family wasn't involved?
yeah, and I just, said, that's that. So,
Did he leave you alone after that?
yeah. So we kept our end of the barracks clean, And these guys, they're a bunch of laziest asses that ever was. Some were pretty good and some weren't, but they could drink. And one of them was in charge of keeping the fire going, because they had like a hot air system with, maybe I guess they burned soft coal,
Like a pot-bellied stove or something?
I don't know what the hang the stove was like.
No, in the tent or in the barracks?
In the barracks. They were wooden barracks, And you had a regular army bed, with blankets.
Was that close to Christmas or
and,
before Christmas?
No, this was when I first went in November.
Oh, in November.
Yeah, and you had snow. It was a very light dusting, and every morning you'd get up and they'd take you down and you'd do calisthenics,
So is this Fort Eustis in
Fort
Virginia?
Eustis, Virginia. And of course you do your calisthenics, and then they take and you go back and they would take you to the mess hall and they would feed you, and you had a tray, and you go down the line and
Did it have like compartments in it?
yeah.
What was a typical breakfast?
Well, sometimes oh gosh, you could have scrambled eggs, and sometimes there was fruit, and
I'm sure I would have liked eggs then.
and it's hard for me to describe just what there was for breakfast,
Did you have a favorite?
Well, I sometimes varied it, bread, lots of jam, bacon,
Pancakes?
Musselman's apple butter,
Oh,
jars of that. It was pretty good food, And sometimes, like for dinners, you'd have real good vegetables and whatnot. And you'd do calisthenics and all that sort of stuff. And one time they said we were going on a hike out into the woods, so they marched us out into some part of the barracks,
Base.
called base, and you put up a tent. You slept in a tent, and you had branches for the bottom. You slept on
Army
that.
cot? Or did you sleep on the
You
bridge?
just slept on the ground, and
Did you have fatigues on?
yeah, and boots, and of course you had a detail that was making the slit trenches for the John,
What year was this approximately?
1951, 50,
Okay.
51. And then after you bumped around out there, I think, let's see.
What would jumping around be? Like going off in the bushes with a compass?
You had they took us to a place where they brought in different types of equipment,
Oh, okay.
and one of them they had what they call airport security. It was a Jeep. In the front was a 30 caliber, in the back they had a 50 caliber machine gun.
Yeah.
And they demonstrated the 30. Well, the Jeep, you know, shook a little bit. When they opened up the 50, the Jeep was bouncing up and down. I don't know what you could hit with a 50 because the
You
Jeep was,
didn't need to hit anything.
yeah, it scared the hell out of it.
Sort of aim in the general direction.
Yeah. And then they had a demonstration of, they put a bunch of guys in a room with just regular light, and they put some guys in a room with red lights, and then they had another room that was another thing, and then they took you outdoors in the dark, and they had a walkway with tripwires, and they wanted to see who could see best.
Yep.
Well, the guys that were in the room with the red light had better vision than the anybody else, you know, and I happened to be one of them. Then they took you over to the range, and you fired the rifle, and then at one place there, I went and I fired a bazooka, you know.
Yep.
And it was quite a thing. Two-man team. One guy loaded the bazooka, and when it was all loaded, he tapped you on the head, and you aimed it when it rested on your shoulder like this, and you just squeezed the trigger. There was no recoil, and so we had that. And then it was getting near time when we were getting ready to be shipped overseas, I guess, because we went through the whatchamacallit, and
The whatchamacallit?
the infirmary that they were doing it, and you went like this with just your sleeves rolled up
Both arms?
and both arms, and you could end up with maybe 5 shots.
Yeah.
So this one kid that was in our crew, he was from Athol.
From Athol?
Athol, yeah, there was me. I was from Athol. One kid was from Clinton. One kid was from Athol. You know, we're all local.
Yeah.
And he was, I had gotten my shot, and I was walking out, and all of a sudden somebody yelled out, "Grab that man!" And this one kid from Athol, he started out, and he was just like he was going downstairs. He was going,
He was
first he went,
fainting.
"Boom," yeah. So they grabbed a hold of him, and so that particular night, I ended up, I got KP, Kitchen Police. I was cleaning up, you know, washing different things, and everybody said, "Gee, Ray, tough shit, we're going on a map thing, you know, a map
Orienteering or something.
orientation with maps." So I says, "Oh," so anyway, I did what I did, and while I was out there in the kitchen, wasn't really hard. And
Well, did you like scrub the pots, and didn't they have a dishwasher machine?
yeah,
A steam
some of the
machine?
stuff you had to clean the tables, you know, do little things to make it, you know, like, I forget just what I was doing. I think I did some cleaning pots or whatever. And in the process, I was working away, and all of a sudden I heard, oh, that sounded like thunder, you know? And of
Oh,
course,
yeah.
it got louder and louder, so I said, oh. So, and I said, "Okay, Adams, you can go back to your..."
Fill
So
it.
I took ass in hand, ran to the thing, and on the way, I got a hold of a newspaper, so I says, well, so I'm laying in my bunk, you know, I was reading the newspaper, these guys come in soaking ass wet. Oh, jeez, they were like drowned rats. I says, well, I see you had a successful map thing. Keep your mouth shut.
Adams.
I was dry, it was soaked to the butt.
Didn't you go through the
So then,
gun course?
yeah, so then they had these, the firing range, you were here, they had these big targets.
Yeah.
And the target would come up with a blank target on it, and you'd fire, and the thing would go down, and then another one would come up, and if you didn't get shit for Shinola, you got Maggie's drawers.
So did you, were you shooting a handgun?
No, rifle.
Rifle,
Yeah.
okay.
I think it was bolt action rifle. The old M1. And so anyway, we did that, and like I said, I fired a bazooka, and I don't know what the hell else it was. And they showed us how to throw a hand grenade, you know, pull the pin and go like that.
Hand over your...
Yeah, hand over. And then I marched back from the bivouac, we called it. And I basically had too much clothes on. I got kind of overheated, but I jumped in the shower and started it cool, and I warmed it up, and I corrected myself. I had a couple of blisters. And then after it got closer to being shipped out, they gave us 5 days delay en route. No, gave us 5 days after basic, and then when they figured out where the hell they were going to do with us, they gave us 15 days to get from Virginia to Fort Hamilton, New York, I believe it was. It was near New Brunswick. There was a college there.
Yeah.
But didn't you
Yeah.
go through live fire?
I-
Basic?
Yeah, I'll get to that one. And somewhere along the line, we used to have every Monday morning you could go down on like sick call, and I went down with a bunch of regulars, and they all came back and they kept me. I was in the hospital for a week. And this Navy woman came in, Navy captain, a nurse, nice looking girl, and she came in and says, all right, Adam, she says, down with the drawers and bend over, and she stuck me in the ass with this needle that's about this long. I don't know what I had, they never told me. But it cured it, and then as you got better, you wash the dishes through the clipper, and that thing was really clean, let me tell you. It was steam, so.
Oh, a steam dishwasher.
Yeah. So while at Eustis, you had to go through the infiltration course. And so they put us in these buses, and they took us from Fort Eustis to, I can't remember what Army base. It probably was used during World War II. And they had an infiltration course. Now, an infiltration course is, they had machine guns here, and the course was slanted this way, and there was a trench here and a trench here, and you walk down this trench and you got down here, and you're up to here, and you had to scramble over the edge of the thing and crawl with a gun under barbed wire, and in certain areas they had a pit that was surrounded by barbed wire, and it had explosive charges in it. Well, we went to the infiltration course, and the first one, they took us out of the buses and they put us into a 2.5-ton truck.
Yep.
And we had to go into what they call a creeping garage. So when you got to the point, the guy that was driving the truck didn't stop, and all of a sudden somebody yelled out, "Stop that truck!" And of course the guy jammed the brakes on, and we all,
Forward.
forward. So we got our butts out of the truck, and the guy says, all right, he says, here's the plan. He says, you're going to line up, and he says, when I blow the whistle, he says, you're going to run this way, run down. And he says, don't be surprised if you hear a noise in the background. All right. And he says, when I blow the whistle the second time, he says, pick out anything that's a hole, previous shell hole. Well, what it was is we were lined up here, and when the boom, boom, boom was the barrage of artillery,
Yeah.
So when you heard the boom, 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 just as you started to run, you could hear this noise. That's the shells going over.
Yeah.
and they land in front of you and go, big, I don't know how big they were,
Mud.
but you could drop that whole unit there in the shell hole, you know?
Yeah.
So when the whistle blow, you go in a shell hole, well, hopefully you got into a new one. It wasn't full of water. Some were a little bit water, you know. So while you're there, I mean, you just crouch down, and I started digging in the shell hole, and I pulled out some fragments of shell, you know, that.
Yeah.
So we did that particular
Did you
thing.
do it just once, or did you get out of the shell hole and run again?
Oh, we ran again, did it a couple of times, you know. But it was weird to hear that noise. You could hear it in the background, what they call. What they did is the guns were like this, and then when they elevated them up, it went further, you know.
So that it would shoot in front of you.
Yeah, in other words, the barrage was landing in front of you, and you were charging the enemy, and this barrage was supposedly to kill the enemy, you know, with Lord Frank Park. But you could hear that noise in the background, boom, boom, and then you did.
Did you know what it was?
Yeah, shells going over, artillery shells. And they weren't that high up, you know. So anyway, after we got through that, we all regrouped, put us back in the trucks, and they took us back to some point, and the next place we ended up was the infiltration course. So the infiltration course, as I said, was a thing. I forget how wide it was, maybe half again as wide as this here, or just about this wide, but it had these pits surrounded by wire, and in those pits were charges, and of course they put wire on them so you wouldn't crawl in them. And guess what? It started raining.
Oh, how nice.
So by the time we got there, we had to march down, and I had on, of course it was cold, so I had on
Oh, this was in November, December?
yeah, November, December.
So
I
what,
think I had on my overcoat, not a real heavy one, and a raincoat.
what do you think the temperature was, 40, 50?
Yeah, about 40, 50 degrees. And as you started down the trench, the water got deeper. So when you got down to the end trench to line up in a line to go up over, the water was up over your belt line. That didn't feel very good. But anyway, when they blew the whistle, you did your best to crawl underneath the barbed wire in this muck, because that's what it was. And you went through and nothing happened, you know, it was a dry run. So then you reassembled, and then the second time you marched down, when the thing started to occur, they had machine gun bullets going off, and every so often somebody would press a button and there'd be a big explosion, and it would blow all this mud and water out of the pit.
Yep.
Well, if you happen to be close to it, you might be lucky, but if you happen to be just about the right place, all that muddy water and that came down on top of you.
Wow.
And so after you went all through that, they turned around and they sort of kind of said, okay, everybody back down the hill and you'll get something to eat, you know? So you went down and they were going to feed you some food, and they used your shit skillet. That's that tray, you know?
Yep.
Of course, you opened it up and it's all full of muddy water, so you kind of rinsed it out.
Yep. Nothing wrong with eating a little dirt, though.
Right. So after you ate and got sort of ready, they didn't march you up. They says, all right, after you eat, back up the hill. So I ate, and I said to myself, okay, so I had a plan in my head. I said, you know, I said to me, this is the biggest effing piece of shit that I've seen yet. Where are all the officers that were supposed to do this? Well, they didn't have to do it. Just you freaking flunkies, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, I says, well, kiss my ass.
Mm-hmm.
So I got halfway up, and I looked down, and I looked up, and they had these little weak street lights, and I couldn't see anybody.
So it was evening?
Yeah, I
Oh,
went
it was
across the
evening.
street, and I looked, and I says, oh, wow, good. So I walked down, and of course,
Oh, so they did it during the day and then they did it again
At
at night?
night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the night one, I said, to hell with this, I'll take my chances. So when I couldn't see anybody that would see me do what I did, I crossed the road, got on the other side. I'm walking down, and underneath the light is a captain. And I says, oh, this is where the shit hits the fan. Fort Eustis, sir, get in that bus. Yes, sir. And you know what I looked like? The water was pouring out of my boots, and it was all muddy and dirty.
Yeah,
And you know what the inside of a Greyhound bus looked like?
used to look like.
Well, we all got in the buses.
Well, they completed the course and then slowly,
Yeah,
Trickled in.
after everybody was done, you know. And the bus was loaded, off we went back to Fort Eustis. So we got to Fort Eustis. The proper thing to do would be to clean the equipment. Well, one of these flunkies got no hot water. So we did the best we could. We laid everything out and tried to clean ourselves up as best we could. The coats were all torn. The overcoats were all ruined. All the weapons are all full of shit, this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
So early in the morning, it sounded like the door came off, and in come, some said he was a full colonel, and he was not happy. He oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
so did
Yeah,
you get
'cause
out
he
of
just
the
bought a
bunk?
bunch of Greyhound buses, right?
Did you get
Well,
up out of the bunks and
no.
salute?
We were sleeping when he came in. But after breakfast, we spent all day, all the clothes, except for certain, I guess they had to leave you enough clothes. Well, you generally had you had another set. But the overcoats and all the stuff had to be sent to the quartermaster to be cleaned. And we spent most all day cleaning all the weapons, getting them, you know, getting the mud out of them and everything, and making them top shape. And I don't know what the results was with the bus company. They must have been fit to be tied. Oh, what a freaking mess. Oh.
Unbelievable.
How many of you in the unit?
Mm-hmm.
So how many buses did you use?
Well, I know there must have been at least 3 or 4.
Oy vey.
Mm-hmm.
So then after this was all done, then I knew that I was going overseas. They had these orientation courses, and they you'd go in with probably about 25, 30 guys, and they'd have a couple of NCOs, and they'd show you movies, and they would I had an idea in my mind that right about then I had figured I was going across the Atlantic. And they would show you, be careful, and I'd put it broadly, if you had sex, be careful what you were doing. You might get something you really don't want, and all sorts of things. And one of the things that came out was, if you have difficulty, if you see a uniformed personnel with an SP or an MP, they're shore patrol military police. And a lot of times they can help you out of a jam. Say you have problems.
Mm-hmm.
You go to an MP, and a lot of times he can help you out. You know, he's not there to shove you in jail or what. And same with shore patrol, in case you happen to be at a port where there was the shore patrol was on duty. So, and then after that, at a certain time, you could go into town with Brunswick, and when it got to be the day before what, there'd be restrictions to certain things. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you were going into town on a bus, they would check to see what pass you had. You know, you had to have a pass. And if you were with a certain group, you couldn't go into town. So
So how did you know whether you were going somewhere?
well, I knew
or
right then.
Korea?
I knew then that I was going over. I didn't know if I was going to England or Germany, but I knew I was going across the Atlantic instead of going across the United States. You know.
Oh, okay.
So the boat we got on was military sea transport. It was kind of gray, and the accommodations are horrible. And in one part there, they I don't know what was wrong, whether it was in the latrines, but there was water running across the floor as the boat,
Oh.
you know. And so anyway, when we got to England, the boat let some people out, and then when the thing got to Bremerhaven, we all got out, and they had these little trains there, and
Why do you say the little?
well, they reminded you of the stuff that they had like in World War One, you know, and they weren't the size of American.
So, like narrow
And,
gauge?
yeah, if I remember rightly, and we got on those, and it took us to this. I think at one time it was an airport hangar, and there was at least double bunks, you know. So yeah, we stayed for a couple of days, and then they took us over to the train and shipped us to southern Germany, to Sonthofen, which was a big concern in Sonthofen that was run by the army, and that was a rebel depot, I guess, for Europe, and possibly, I don't know, it might even been for Italy or wherever. So we were there, and I remember, you know, you get guys and they would, you know, talk where you're from, this, that, and the other thing, and then one day they stuck on the bulletin board. The guy says that there's anything, you know, the bulletin board will tell you what's going on. I forget how they designated us, and it said at this particular time you would go to this particular place, and you would be reassigned. Probably they would change your military occupational specialty, your MOS number. Now mine was in transportation. The brass I had was like a wheel, a ship's wheel. That was transportation. So when I went in, and the sergeant there, and he made me 2 offerings. Military police. I'd rather ride than walk. Make me a military policeman. So.
Nice guy, or just very,
You know,
very matter of fact.
What rank he had, and I think, I don't know if it was right then and there or the next day, I was in the paper, assigning me to the 5th Military Police Platoon in purchase car in Germany.
Yeah,
Oh,
shout
Let's hold it there. Let's hold it there, because we all want a nap. So you can stop your camera.
Oh, was I supposed to be running it?
No. So why don't you have a nap? Justin and I will go upstairs. That way Mom can
Did you record that?